how focusing enters into somebody's life is kind of magical in a way, like somebody
Yeah.
had the book on the shelf for 10 years and then brought it down, and
Yeah.
other people, just sort of stumbled into it because somebody from focusing listened to them in a beautiful way. I mean, so I'm one of many people who were
Mhm.
part of all of that at the
Mhm.
beginning. I first entered in through a changes group that was being offered at the University of Chicago, and the changes group was started by a group of graduate students who were studying with Jenlin, who wanted to respond to the political situation by providing a sort of countercultural
Mhm.
approach. Discovering the changes group and listening and
Mhm.
focusing, it was an incredibly alive, expansive time. I mean,
Mhm.
one thing, when I learned focusing, it was like, oh, I've been doing this my whole life.
Mhm.
But I didn't know that. I didn't know it was this. And so that kind of more conscious differentiation of the process, was also very resonant with my journey up to that point. So it's like everything kind of came alive in a whole new way. We had a dream group. We had a women's group. We had a food co-op. We all kind of found apartments in a similar area. So we really
Mhm.
were like a different culture, really, the way we
Yeah.
were living.
Mhm.
So it was like everything kind of burst open in so
Yeah.
many ways. We had a group that met in the sanctuary of this huge old church at the University of Chicago,
Mhm.
and we would lay on the floor right in front of the altar and do clearing a space.
Wow.
And then from there would be these different openings.
Mhm.
So that kind of creativity and aliveness
Yeah.
and, things
Yeah.
sort of bursting out. I mean, I
Yeah.
figured out a way to use focusing to help people write poetry. I mean, it was just, an amazing time. And then,
Mhm.
well, for one thing, Jenlin wanted, with his little book, it was really meant for the everyday person.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's focusing is a process we can all learn. We don't have to be in therapy or go to a
Mhm. Yeah.
so he really wanted that sort of grassroots
Mhm.
capacity to burgeon. But also the little changes groups that were here and there, they never sort of amounted to anything. Something more had to happen. There had to be
Mhm.
some kind of structure. And so what was so amazing was that
Mhm.
he said, "You're in charge. So whatever you say is what's going to happen." But this was sort of like after we would have these long meetings and he would tell me everything he wanted me to do.
Yeah.
Then he would say, "But you're
Yeah.
in charge." And
Okay.
I believed him. And that was
Mhm.
what the deepest gift was for me. Focusing and Jenlin's work was more well known in other countries than it was in the United States. We had to create something that would be long enough that would
Mhm.
be worthwhile for
Of
people
course.
to
Yeah.
come all the way over here from Europe,
Mhm.
wherever. And so that's where it all started, because we wanted to offer something that would provide more training and connect with people all over the
Yeah.
world. But what struck me, what moved me the most was
Mhm.
that most people came who could hardly speak any English.
Right.
And their desire to learn
Mhm.
this was so great that they were willing to, sort of confront all these challenges and
Mhm.
obstacles. And
Mhm.
people had culture shock. People would get somewhat like headaches and things like that, just trying to
Mhm.
concentrate and trying to translate. And so that was very powerful for me to
Mhm.
see
Mhm.
that this touched something so deep in
Mhm.
all these people that came from all over the world, that they wanted to learn. And we would have groups that were like project groups where
Mhm.
people would use the 5 days and the time when we would meet to have like partnerships that would help you focus on your project, what you're
Mhm.
going to develop when you go back to your country. given all of those obstacles, that it was very meaningful for people. And that began a kind of international connection. People in Europe invited people from the United States over there to teach. And so that kind of cross-cultural fertilization, was really there at the beginning. I think all of us, as we come into this movement, there's sort of like the implicit whole, which is, the implicit felt senses of all of us, right? And resonates with Jenlen's philosophy, are implying the next step.
Yes.
So it's not like it's me, individual. It's more this sense of this large implying that if we pay attention and we listen at this level, then the next step unfolds and it seems to carry forward this whole big thing. And I felt like that's where it all started at the beginning.
Jean taught me, remember, Mary, you must connect with the person behind the eyes. Don't get hung up in the content. Context is important, and it has to feel safe. And he was a master at that. I mean, one of the best I've ever witnessed. I came upon this article, A Theory of Personality Change by Jenlen. I stayed up all night, I read it, and inside me said, you have to meet this man. So I phoned the University of Chicago the next day, and this voice said, Jean Jenlen speaking. I nearly flipped out. I didn't know what to say. It was so crazy. So I just went on telling them who I was and what happened, that I had to meet him. And there was dead silence on the phone for about 2 minutes. And I thought, did he hang up? He came back on and he said, okay, I'm giving a workshop at the Blue Argyle or something down in Hyde Park. And you can come home with me and stay with Mary and I as long as you want. Wasn't that amazing? So I spent a week with Jean. It was the most wonderful week of my life. What I sense inside most fondly is the depth of relationships that we formed that are lasting forever. And also the other part is working real hard to create a safe atmosphere where everybody could be who they are. Acceptance, respect, listening. Listening was extremely important. I'm most proud of creating a structure that enables persons to participate in an international institute that is an environment of safety, gentleness, and care. You can't pull on a plant to make it grow. You can water it, you can feed it, you can sit beside it, and I think we're like that inside too. It's very difficult in today's world, there's no question. But I think for focusers, it should be easier to get together. I like about the present week-longs, it's more engaging of all the participants. There's a team of you that do it, and I think it gives more variety and more enhancement. There's just more exchange with different teachers. And also you'll form very deep connections. You'll make friends for life, which is a joy. Enjoy the week long and shut all that out, you know. Turn off cell phones, turn off news, turn off, and just have that intimate, I call it contemplative time, because it's really in here. And just be honest with where you are and who you are, and listen, and be gentle and caring with yourself, and ask for what you need. If things are not feeling good, say there's something off here. And just at the first night you gather, probably you'll feel nervous and shy. But just take some deep breaths and try to clear your space and say, I'm here for me. Yes. It'll be once in a lifetime. Don't miss the graces of the moment.
First thing is love one another. Listen carefully to yourself and to the other. Gene Gendlin became a very significant teacher for me. He was the chair of my dissertation. So he guided me and supported me in the work that I was doing. Some of the people that I met in Changes in 1971 are still good friends and colleagues. It's remarkable how many people from that week-long are very, very active, focusing teachers and participants now. It seems wonderful that they stayed with us and that it built a community as we were hoping it would do. For me, it's the main thing is how it builds a worldwide community. It's a multicultural, people from Japan, from China, from Europe, from the United States, from South America. I mean, that's very rare that something brings people together from all those places. My goodness, I think we need it, to have people discover that in some basic ways we're all alike and we all have feelings and needs. And all appreciate being listened to. It deepens people's the way they know each other and the way that they understand focusing and get committed to sharing it and spreading it around the community that they're in.
My relationship with Gene was just so incredible because I guess he saw something in me, I don't know what, but he really took me under his wing and we had a very special relationship. As I went into training, I would go to Chicago regularly for these weekend workshops. When we started, the people who came were from Chicago and Michigan and, Wisconsin and states around. And then over time, as people started to hear about it, suddenly people were coming from China, Japan, Israel, Europe. So then it became truly an international week. People really had time to connect and take long walks and just be together. And it was very intimate and wonderful. And she would always come, for a certain period of time and teach. I guess it was a certain kind of intimacy. I mean, we can have that through email and, we can do things like Zoom, which is, I feel like I'm really talking to you. So,
right.
But there was an intimacy, especially in those week-longs. People really not only got to know each other, but people were really open about what they were carrying around and sharing so deeply, and people listened. And when you're living with people for a week, things happen, or somebody gets, for example, triggered by something that somebody says, and suddenly you're in a group and one person bursts into tears, and there are people there right away to listen and to be with that person. I mean, there's an intimacy of living with somebody for a week. obviously, that
Right.
the connections were amazing. And because it was in the country, people could walk and talk and chat. And I also remember partnering with different people. And there were some people I just didn't resonate with at all. And they listened, but I didn't feel like they got me in some way. And so part of that learning was you can like somebody, but they don't necessarily make a good focusing partner. You could have a nice conversation over coffee, but when you wanted to open up about something deep and inner, no, we just communicate so differently now because somebody has a thought and they post it online and people respond to it. Our brains have been rewired for present times. We've become such an international community. And I think that, and of course, with the internet, you can post stuff immediately.
Right.
And so we didn't have that in the early days. So now if anybody has anything to say, they just post it on one of the sites, the CC list or the digest list, one of the lists. And there's a conversation that can go on. And that's kind of amazing because it didn't used to be that way. But I love the work so much. And I'm so delighted that it's grown the way it's grown and that we're a worldwide community now. And we have connections all over the world. I mean, you and I are talking, we're in totally different places, and it's like you're here,
Right.
It's just
Exactly.
so great that we can connect the way we do. And I think when people know focusing and have that ability to listen to each other, there's something already so precious, sacred almost, that we have that in common.
Yes.
I love that. I mean, as soon as you know that somebody's a focusing person, there's 20 things you know about.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like without even discussing it, it's like, okay, he knows how to listen. He knows about empathy. He knows where you get a felt sense in your body. I can use those terms. I can say, oh, I've got this sense in my gut, and you know what I'm saying. It's just, there's a language, whether it's spoken or unspoken, that connects you, binds you together, I think.
I thought, wow, how do I get to know myself better? Because something is going on in me that's so much more than I ever knew how to find out. And at the end of it, summertime in October, just at the beginning of my second year of linguistics, graduate school, a friend of mine told me that, there's this thing happening on Sunday nights. This guy is teaching something. We should go. I don't know. Shall we do that? I'm not sure. Then another friend from a different part of my life who didn't know the first friend said the same thing to me. We should go. This thing on Sunday night's free. Let's check it out. Let's see what it is. So on a Sunday night in October of 1972, I found myself in the library of the University Church at the edge of campus. And there was Eugene Gendlin, looking like he was completely relaxed. He even was slouched, sitting on a table, like he had no bones in his body. And he said, "This is changes. If you're here, you belong here." Wow. Those were the first words I heard him say. I didn't get focusing for a long time. But I liked trading listening turns with people.
Okay.
I liked one person speaking and another person doing nothing but just hearing them. My family life had been completely different from that. No one had ever listened to me or been interested in the unclear forming. This group, the Changes community, I quickly made friends. I quickly made my best friends there. There was like a style, an assumption about how you would be with people. If somebody said something, what people often said back was, "Huh, and how was that for you?" And something was fed deep in my soul when somebody said to me, "And how was that for you?" Instead of blah, blah, blah. Here's how it was for me. You should think, you should feel. That when I first learned focusing from him in the early 70s, there were no steps.
Okay.
In order to write his book, I believe he had to develop something like steps.
Okay.
And that's where these particular 6 steps that are associated with focusing forever because of his book, that's where they started coming in. But the assisting at those workshops with Gene, starting in about 1980, was my real education in focusing. And as he was explaining focusing to the group, I was taking notes constantly, every time. Gene's workshops that started in 79 or 80, and they were every other weekend, 6 times a year. Most of the people, my impression was that most of the people who took the workshops were therapists. It was not training in bringing focusing to therapy clients.
Okay.
It was purely focusing for yourself. The combination of focusing and client-centered therapy is very natural. It's where Gene came from. And I think he assumed that he didn't have to teach people to do therapy, that they would already know how to do therapy, and they would just combine focusing with what they already did.
Yeah.
And at the end of every weekend, on the last afternoon, he would do a demo.
Mm.
And he would sit with somebody, and he would basically be with them as a therapist. He wasn't saying, where do you feel it in your body? He wasn't teaching focusing. He was talking to them about something going on in their life, reflecting, sharing from his own feel of it. He was demonstrating focusing therapy. I was lucky enough to teach the Weeklong for a few years. But I want to say that my first Weeklong in 1989 was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life because of the people I met there. And how spending that week together, exploring the feelings and ideas around focusing and applying focusing in the world, it formed bonds, not just of friendship, but of working together and creating things together. When my students say, should I go to the Weeklong? I always say, oh, yes. It's just magical because you're meeting some of the most interesting, exciting people in the world, and it is a world-based group. And you really expand your world. Take this opportunity while you're at the Weeklong to follow your felt sense, make friendships, get excited about things you might do together, papers you might write together, workshops, conferences you might create together. It's such fertile ground. Yes, you have great teachers.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've already discovered that the other people you're meeting here are really exciting too. And so I love the Weeklong for that. And everybody I know who's been to the Weeklong, my students have always said, thank you for telling me to go there. You were right. It's wonderful. and the week-long especially is the human connection as we are moving out into our full professional life. We're at some point, maybe just now, maybe a little earlier, we completed our training, but of course, training and learning is lifelong. And there's that excitement of now taking the next steps. What will you create? And you know, the feeling that I had all along from focusing, which is nobody's going to put it on you. You're going to be creating it, and not just focusing, but how you make use of it. You're going to be creating it yourself.
Okay.
And that spirit is always part of the International Focusing Institute's approach to encouraging trainers and coordinators. What would you like to create? How will you be bringing focusing into the world? What do you connect focusing with? You have the opportunity here at the week-long to really expand your horizons about focusing itself. Because whatever way you learn to do focusing is only one of the modalities. And here at the week-long, you'll be able to learn others. Mine is called inner relationship focusing. Kevin McAvenue calls his whole body focusing. And many other people are now doing these approaches. Robert Lee calls his domain focusing. And then there's people who've carried further the 6-step focusing that Jen Lund put in his book, plus the applications of focusing to working in different areas with children, with sexuality, with psychotherapy, with dreams, with illness,
movement,
pain, with movement, with art. Lori Rappaport's work with focusing in art is something to really check out. And so you might feel like you're a kid in a candy store, but do eat the candy. It won't spike your insulin. Enjoy the variety. Like if there's you have a choice between going to a meeting where there's somebody you're familiar with, somebody you know, and a meeting where there's somebody who's doing something you've never heard of before. Do the new thing. That's my advice. Expand. Focusing is this huge tent with many acts, many circus acts going on inside. Go around, see how big this tent is. That's what I advise.
Exactly.